And excellent. We are live. Welcome aboard, everybody, and welcome to another episode here in the PDOCS live stream series. I'm pretty stoked, and some of you guys might have saw the post this week that I wrote about it, to have Eddie on today. Eddie was my first business coach and mentor that I actually hired outside of buying a little, Facebook ads course, how to build your own ads and run an agency. And it's so funny, even thinking back to then, Eddie, in late 2017, early 2018, you could literally go buy a $400 course, implement it, and get results. And like now, I don't think you can do that with Facebook ads. So much has changed. And that's just one aspect we can talk about, but it's crazy just the evolution in this space in the last 6 years. And let's just dive in with a little introduction, and maybe you can talk a little about how we met, but give a little background about yourself, and thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I guess I'm a sales and marketing guy through and through. I was in DECA in high school, and before that, I was doing a little side hustle, trying to market my labor skills to like local contractors that were flipping houses in my neighborhood and lawn mowing and all of the stuff I think all of us did, lemonade stands and whatnot. But that grew. I ended up getting a degree in corporate communication and would go on and get into marketing from a more traditional standpoint. First business I started actually was a promotional printing company. We would sell screen printed, custom designed t-shirts to organizations and events, primarily in sports teams, intramural sports teams and stuff like that. Rec league sports teams, banners, window vinyl, stuff like that. And our motto is your idea, our design. And so we went on the premise of like if you can think it but you can't create it, we can help you create it and put it on a shirt or something, right? And so I quickly learned I didn't really like that because I didn't like the physical production aspect of it. I liked it a lot more when we outsourced our printing process. And so I'd go on and I would sell cell phones, cars, insurance, rigging like wire rope, chain sling, shackles, and all of this, primarily generating most of my leads. Obviously, if you're selling like cars and stuff, people are coming onto it a lot, but selling like wire rope, chain sling, shackles, insurance, even the t-shirts, like you have to go out and you eat what you kill, and you have to go hunting. And so all of that led to me getting a job with Clear Channel iHeartMedia and selling billboards. And it was at that point that I realized that I had a billboard in my hand, right? And so I wasn't a really big social media guy. I never really got into the social media platforms. I thought they were stupid, but I did see the value in using them to make money, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so I was spending a lot of time commuting, and sometimes I want to be able to pick up my daughter working at Clear Channel, even though I was outdoor sales rep, until like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night on a weeknight because I was stuck in traffic coming back from the city. So to be able to figure out how to do that online from the comforts of my home, it was something that I wanted to figure out. And so I first started off just learning, I guess, how to translate my skills offline to online. And that was, I wouldn't say turbulent, but it was a learning experience for sure.
I think
And
that's one of those things, once you figure it out and once that clicks, everything becomes a lot easier. For some people, that's quick. For some people, that takes a while. Some people never figure out how to transfer it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But I think that's a big part.
yeah, because all of us are developing skills in our careers or like whatever it is that we're doing. Some people, even take like my wife, for example, or my kids. My wife for a long time was a stay-at-home mom. And we have 7 kids. And so say like my oldest child, she's 14. Two things that they have skills with is like childcare right off the bat, right?
Yep. Hunter's
Because that's
14.
something that they've never maybe got paid to do, but they do a lot of it. And so, organization, time management, like there's all these skills that you're developing.
That's true.
And so, as you're developing those skills, the way that you apply them, um, the medium might change, but the skill set doesn't. I think I just lost you.
No, I still hear you fine.
Oh, there we go. You disappeared for a second. But yeah, the skill set it remains the same. And so translating this the skills that I had to online, once that had happened, it became a lot easier for me to more predictably grow my business and also identify the skill sets that I needed to improve or ones that I just needed to like forget about getting good at and try to find someone to help me to execute or implement those things. Because there's some things like the way my brain is wired. I'm just not going to be good at some things, and I will like rely on my wife for those things or the people that my wife hires because if I do it, it might work for me, but it will never be duplicatable or it'll never be processable. So there's value in identifying what does and doesn't work for you. And so I had to do that. And then yeah, just continuing to just self-evaluate and identify like what direction. I think it was in like 2020, I'd made the decision that I wanted to pivot away from being more of just like a marketer or like someone that runs Facebook ads and Google ads because it had become a commodity. It had long been a commodity at that point, but I was coming to the realization in my journey that I was a commodity, no matter how much of an expert or good results that I was. There's anybody say they're an expert. It's like when I sold cars, and that was really the connection I made was that like when you're selling cars, everyone has best service, everyone has the same cars, everyone has the same MSRP, everybody, it's gonna sell you the same BS. So what
Mhm.
makes you different, right? And so you make you different. People buy people. And then they buy the service. So I lost my train of thought there.
No, I
But
mean you covered a lot. No, you covered a lot. That's a good starting point. And I mean, a lot of that talking about your whole journey is going to tie into what we're talking about here today. As you
yeah, I
guys
mean,
know,
it's
when
all like a process, I guess, that builds on itself. It's an evolution. More so was the picture that I was trying to paint.
100%. Yeah. And you mentioned a lot of the key aspects of that and then what goes into that and like your trajectory through that and all the different things you tried to
Oh
figure
yeah,
out,
the commodity. Yeah, so I pivoted more into ad tech, which is where this call I feel like is more going to go. But that was an intentional uh decision that I made just by like being like self-aware and evaluating like, all right, cool, like how can I make myself more desirable to the people that I want to work with? But yeah, I mean more or less that's how we got to right here.
Awesome. Yeah, and a little more backstory. As I mentioned, Eddie and I met online in about 2018, early 2018 or so. I started following him. It's funny that you said like I wasn't much of a social media guy, because one of the things you did, and one of the things you did for a while really well, is grow and monetize Instagram accounts, right? So like for something that you weren't even that fond of, you became an expert in that. And you said something there also interesting. Like anyone could say they're an expert, but what's important is when the other people that are watching you are classifying you as the expert. Like that's the people's opinion that matter. It doesn't really matter what we say or think about ourselves. It matters what the consumer, what the market thinks of us, and your peers, your competition, people like that, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, not even the last ones to an extent. It's more your market and your consumers, more than anything. But yeah, so Eddie has helped me in numerous ways throughout my transition. I mean, when you and I first met, I was still working my full-time job and I just started taking courses and reading books, but I was determined. I had desired to pay money and hire a coach and figure out like a better way. But what attracted me is somebody that was authentic, that wasn't like just, it wasn't just the whole Lamborghini marketing gurus that were on the scene back then, you know what I mean? And that's a lot of big things I picked up. And I had just mentioned in the post as well, this is my latest read, Eddie's book here. That was the last one I finished. I started a new book called Assisted by John Stockton just after this one, but
Oh, really?
that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But this one's really John,
We're
John.
from the same place.
Oh, you and Stockton are?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Um, you guys are both really scrappy from what I understand of your book and what I know about Stockton.
Yeah, he's
Um,
kind of an asshole.
yeah, unless you're on his team.
Yeah, I played against his nephew, Sean Stockton, a lot. We're the same
I've
age.
seen a lot of interviews. He's an interesting guy,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely an underdog story that set some records that will probably never be broken. So I mean, that's the cool thing, with a guy like that.
Yeah,
Um,
for
and a
sure.
cool thing like that could be any one of us. That's kind of my point there with that analogy. Like you don't have to be the 7 foot, dominant center to be a star, to be a stud. You know what I mean? You bring in your skill set, but nothing really replaces the hard work. So what we really want to get into talking about here, and something you and I discussed earlier in the week when we chatted, was like working the plan, right? You had told me what you're doing now, and you're like, cold emails working best for me. And I was like, yeah, man, like we use 3 or 4 things, right? But they all work if you work them. And that's what I'm talking about. So through kind of trial and error or through, templates or through market research, you're going to know the different avenues. For us, we use like mutually beneficial partnerships, paid media, cold email, and organic Facebook and group monetization. Like it's those 4. And they all work if you work them, right? But you'll figure out which one's better for you. And then you'll optimize that system and make it repeatable, as Eddie said, and delegate or outsource or hire people to do the aspects that you're not great at, right? So those are some of the things I'd like to talk about. I'd like to get your take on just like working the plan. And maybe the first thing to start here, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, how do I kind of assess which plan or which approach I start with?
I think that I don't know, the way that I looked at it was that I looked at the lowest barrier entry point, because if you choose something that's like a high barrier entry point, then you better have like a full-time job and like a salary in some way to like feed your family or
Mm.
yourself, or else you're gonna go really hungry. Not all the time, you might not always be lean in like you feast or famine. I lived that way for a long time, but it's not a way to like be sustainable. I remember me and my wife having like monster months and being like, man, it'd be awesome if this lasted forever. But then like COVID hit. How do you prepare for a thing like COVID? You can't.
No, I agree.
You can't. So you have to adapt, right? And so but if you have a sustainable strategy or something that like works, like me and Ray like sports, so I guess we talk about sports like the give and go, like John Stockton, like it works, it just works. I teach my middle school boys, the give and go, and they're like, coach, what if the other team knows what we're gonna do? I said, even better. They start cheating, then this is what you do. It doesn't matter what they do, there's always a counter, but you gotta like have that go-to. So I like my go-to to be a low barrier entry point, because like anybody could do it. I could train my 12 and 14-year-old to send cold emails. I can send cold emails. I can train somebody in the Philippines to send cold emails. I can train somebody in India, Canada, South America, anywhere in the world I can send them. They don't even have to speak my language to be able to send a cold email, because I have a template that works. And so like obviously taking the time to get the template, yeah, there's some work there, but like you could, like Ray said, read the right books. How you know what the right books are? I don't know, find someone you think that has the success you want and then model what they do. A lot of people swear by that breakthrough advertising. I have a PDF copy of it. But some people are like, man, that book's so outdated. I would never write my copy based off that. If I put that book in front of my wife, who's a copywriter, she'd probably like scoff. Like, I'm not gonna read that book. I have a psychology degree. Like, I'm gonna do some research and write some copy. And so everyone's got their own thing. But that goes back to what I was saying about like my own journey and your journey. So you got to identify what it is that you need to get better at and what it is you just need to delegate. I can write copy and be super competent copywriter. I've paid people a lot of money to help me become a better copywriter. But if I can get my wife to write some copy, I'm gonna get my wife to write copy. And that's just because that's what she does. She writes. I sell, I market, I can do my own graphic designing, and I do my own graphic designing and give me the results that I want. But it's probably a little bit slower and not as high quality as like paying somebody else to do it. Isn't
Mm.
it? at a cost, yeah, it sucks. But ideally, you're running and growing your business in a way that if you delegate, then it can help you grow faster. And so just starting off that low barrier entry point where you can get really good at that thing, cold emailing, Facebook groups, Instagram accounts, YouTube channels, as crazy as it sounds. It seems like it's not, but it really is. Like if you look at a lot of your favorite influencers' first videos, they suck if they haven't already scrubbed them. But the ones that don't scrub them, you look at them like, oh wow, like that's nothing like what I'm watching now. And people don't care because it's kind of nice to be able to go back and see the process. But yeah, just things that don't cost any money, I guess. And then moving your way up to the more advanced tactics. Maybe you don't ever run a Facebook ad. Maybe you're a coach, right? I wouldn't tell you to learn how to run Facebook ads. That sounds stupid. Go hire somebody that can do it. Be educated enough to know if they're doing a good or bad job, but like by no means should you learn how to run Facebook ads.
I agree.
Um, when I decided to get into ad tech, it wasn't like I had to learn advertising or marketing or even the platforms that I wanted to use. I just had to learn how to navigate to get to the information that I wanted to get, right? And so um I do a lot of like, I don't know, like regular Facebook and Google marketing, but I add in the new things. So it's I would say Facebook and Google ads are kind of like low barrier entry point now. I don't want to say that because they cost money, but like anybody can learn them really. Ray had said that like he doesn't think that you could buy a course for $500 and run Facebook ads, and I agree with that. But like,
I think you could do it. My point was, I don't think you could do it and really compete and get leads like you could
no,
the
I don't.
same
I
way.
agree.
So
Yeah,
much
it's
has
like one of
changed with
those
interest
things like
targeting.
anybody can do it, but like to
Yeah,
do it
now
at a
you have to
high
be in the top
level.
20% rather than just competent years ago.
Yeah. To do it at a high level, like you definitely have to spend more than like $500.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally. And
yeah,
that's again,
or
I
the
would agree
time,
with you.
right?
Most
So
like,
like,
oh, go ahead.
but the more or less the point that I'm making is that like you want to start low and then build up, and then you can add those things. Like when I go to people, I'm like, hey, like I can use first party data and I can um train your algorithm faster, and like it's a lot different conversation than like, hey, I can run your Facebook ads. Well, how do I know you'll be better than this other company? Well, like I have really good strategies. What are the strategies? It's like, oh, well, this is the last person said, or the person a year ago said and didn't work. So it's gives you the ability to really set yourself apart. And there's a lot of in anticipation for this call, there's a lot of certifications that you can get for free now through the government. I'll send them to Ray or however Ray wants them. But there's like federal virtual training programs and then free certifications to learn things like Python and ads and all kinds of different
That's cool.
Six Sigma. Like if you're a coach, if you became a Six Sigma, you'd automatically be more reputable and trustworthy and make a lot more money from your clients because even though you're a coach, you're a Six Sigma coach also. And so then it opens up the door for like corporate consultation opportunities and stuff. And so like more or less the point that I'm making is to start low and then and build up from there.
No, that's a good starting kind of point. I like that, look for something with a low barrier of entry to first start. And then, like he said, right now, Eddie, and like he said, a great example is cold email of something that's replicatable that anybody in the world can do. You just have to figure out what works in terms of the template and the length and the copy. And that's not very hard either. I don't think any of this stuff is very hard other than doing it consistently. So many people are like, I sent out this many emails, I didn't get a response, so I give up, or I sent out this many messages, or I did this many posts and I'm not getting engagement. It's really consistency and hard work, and there's no substitute for that. And I think you and I both kind of preach that, going way back. And then like figure out when I was trying to ask or my opinion on like figuring out where to start is for me personally, I started with organic using Facebook groups and just kind of growing my own Facebook presence using other people's groups to start before I ever started any of my own or monetized that. And I had pretty good success with that. I very quickly mixed in cold email. So I agree with Eddie. I started with things that were free. They worked for me, but I had to work them. I had to go and do my posts and my messages every day and put in the work. And then once you get good at it, it really becomes pretty simple to me. Most people I speak with think organic is hard. And I'm one of the few people that I know that says I enjoy organic. It's pretty easy for me. I still go do it. I'm actually just running a new organic campaign right now that I'm leading, and I'm building out some curriculum and training for my private students to share with them to show that like this stuff's still working. But I think anything works if you really work it. But I fully agree with start with the free ones, figuring out what's worked for you. And then I think a good business model as you scale, if this is what you want, you're going to 25, 30, 30K plus months. Yeah, at that point, it might be a good idea to look at mixing in a healthy blend of paid advertising as well with organic, because I think a business runs better when they have kind of both and they're not just reliant on one or the other. But that is by no means a requisite or necessary. Just depends on how far you want to go and how quick you want to scale.
Yeah,
Anything to
for
add to
sure.
that, Eddie?
Yeah, actually, so like for me, my low barrier entry point was I've been blessed to have like certain people in my life that have been really successful and able to impart wisdom my way. So one of my millionaire mentors, I'll just say that like they're like a guru or anything. Like I personally know this person since I was like 16. And they're only a couple years older than me, but I think they were a freshman in college when I was a sophomore or junior in high school. But they have like multiple million-dollar companies now in multiple industries. And one of the things that he had said to me was like find something with low barrier entry point. But his idea of a low barrier entry point was no competition, right? And so he's like, info products are selling. He had introduced me to some like now defunct like online training platform or whatever. I don't even know. Like I actually did like they got sued, but I actually did learn something from it. And so like I don't know, whatever. Thank you.
It's
And
just
I got
funny
like a
because there's a few
$13
of those.
settlement
I
check
know
from
what you're
it.
saying,
But
though.
I did learn something from it that made me lots of money in the future. But he had
It's great.
introduced me to that via Snapchat. I think I bought like a $50 course on Snapchat marketing, and I was like, this is whack. I hate showing my face all the time. Need something more anonymous. And I like hated my life at the time. And then Facebook ads were like not super new. And thinking back then and now, it was still like kind of low barrier entry point, but I understand why he like said what he said because like no one's talking about Instagram. He's like, you could go in there. He said, no one knows who the fuck Eddie Smith is. No one cares how good you are at sales. No one cares like what you've done or how good your ideas are because who the fuck are you? And he's my friend, my buddy, like my for real friend.
Yeah.
So he can say that to me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. He's like, no one will care about your ideas until like you become an expert at something. He's like, when you're an expert at something, then everybody wants to hear what you have to say, even if it's not about what you're an expert on. And I was like, oh, okay. And like I'm still a little bit like hood Eddie back then. So I'm like, oh, like it's super uncomfortable and exposing. And so I started Instagram marketing because I realized that no one else was talking about it. No one else was doing it. It was new. It was fresh. It was Wild Wild West. And so if I become good at that, then who the fuck am I competing with? Nobody. It's me and nobody else. I guess you can call like the blue ocean. I hate that though, the blue ocean stuff. I think it's true, but I just think it's not as black and white as they make it. And a red ocean doesn't always mean like it's bad. Maybe like it's a feeding frenzy and like everyone's eating. The fuck? Like red ocean isn't always a bad thing. And blue ocean, maybe there's nothing to eat there. Like but people don't think about these things.
And then
But
there's a combination. There's the purple ocean theory that Steve Larson talks about with the combination, which is also interesting.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's
But
pretty cool.
yeah, so Instagram was my low barrier entry point because no one else was like an expert at it, and it gave me like a way to get really ascend in expertness really fast. And I did because I was committed, dedicated, not because I liked Instagram or good at Instagram. I could give a fuck less about Instagram. I didn't even show my face. I don't even care now. I It's just a tool. But somebody I know here locally in the Chicago area, they sell like the armpit of like real estate insurance. It's like some like weird ass insurance that only like a handful of people need, but like if they need it, they need it. And they make like millions of dollars just doing that one thing, you
Yeah,
know? So that's really all it takes.
yeah.
I know
No,
someone that made millions selling scrap wood as stints.
there's multiple stories I've heard like that of just these weird outlier things. But yeah, I mean, exactly. If it works, it works.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
stints, if you don't know what that is, it's like you'd have like the 2x4, and then you would have like the stints keeping it in, and you'd pour the concrete. So literally they made millions of dollars just from people's garbage wood.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
So yeah, that was my low barrier entry point. So for you, it might look different. Don't go out there being like just a regular coach. I'm a business coach. All right, cool. I'm a coach that coaches coaches that coaches coaches. Like, cool. Like, no, like I'm a Six Sigma efficiency online mentor, and I can help you get your business processes up like Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah. Focus on one like laser targeted dialed in result rather than I can help everybody do everything under the sun. That's one thing very early on that I would agree with, that I think a lot of newcomers to this go wrong. I do a lot of sessions with like people just looking to craft their first offer and the way they see business. And um and then the one thing I see very common is, oh, I want to do all this stuff and help everybody and solve all these problems. I'm like, that's A, that's not realistic. B, once you're speaking to everybody, you're really speaking to nobody. Like, how do you dial in your message to a specific person when you're trying to help everybody? You can't do that, right? And if you're trying to go to the masses, I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but it's a lot more competition. And depending on what industry you're in, like, good luck. But I mean, that's the basic point of that. If you're speaking to everybody, you're really speaking to nobody. So dial in a result or a problem that you're solving so you can go speak to the person that has this problem and talk about the result and deliver a desired solution. Very
Well, I
simply.
like to play cricket when I play darts. And so when you play cricket, you're aiming for the bullseye, but like when you're aiming for the bullseye, you're gonna hit a 20 or a 15 or even something undesirable. And that's the whole point with your copy. Like if you're trying to hit that bullseye, you are still gonna reach those other people.
Yep. Yep. And I think the other thing about copy that people don't always, I think it's got two main intents. Like number one is to draw in and speak to your ideal audience. I think the other aspect is to push away your not ideal audience. And I think people are afraid to do that sometimes. It's like it's okay to say something that's not going to draw in the person you're not trying to attract anyhow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, that was it. I have breakthrough advertising as well, and I still find that book interesting, and I still use that thought process when it comes to a lot of copies. So like you said, people have different thoughts. Like, why would I use that 30-year-old or 50-year-old strategy or whatever it is, right? But like some things just don't change in the human psychology or in how to market, right? And how to persuade people or to get their attention. I mean, marketing's got a few aspects to it. The first intent is to get their attention, and then it's to educate and start to persuade, and then build intrigue, and then close a deal, right? Or sell a product.
Yeah.
So it's like all those little different phases, and they all have their different aspects. One is just your subject line, right? That's what gets the attention in a cold email. The other one is the one that's persuading or educating. That's the body of it, right? And then the call to action is what gets them onto the sales page. So the intent, the inquiry. So they all have these little parts, and you just got to figure out what works for you. But whether you're doing cold email, it could be that simple, or organic, the little parts are the post gets the attention. The comments are where I engage and educate. The DMs is where I, send a resource and book the call to action, right? And it's all a process and it all works. But I think something that you talked about really early on, and maybe when you first like started to talk about your opening, was like, people thinking that they have to hustle and do it all themselves. And you even talk about that a little in your book. Like that was you burnt yourself out at one point. You were getting these astronomical months, but you're also, burning yourself out and in more ways than one. Talk about that and that epiphany for you a little.
I just realized that like because I came from a corporate background that like, none of these corporations have just like one person doing everything. There are just all these different departments and people like working together. Even in like the most like shitty businesses, they still have like team and support staff. So like running online business is no different. And if you try to do it all on your own, you look really stupid because there's no way that you can like have that many eyeballs. and
Yep,
have like quality eyeballs if you are keeping up with everything. No way.
I
So
would
it's just
agree.
like looking at my business as a business and not just like as a hustle.
Nope, that's a huge aspect. But that was also a little difficult from something you had, like for you in particular, from something you kind of hadn't bred in you from a younger age, right? If you want something done right, like do it yourself. So like you had a little bit of an internal conflict of like, well, I want it done right, I want to do it myself, but I'm also don't have the, I also see the value in delegating it. So I think that's also a struggle a lot of people have. What like pushed you over the edge of like being able to let go and maybe it's the ego.
Yeah, I guess there's a layer of ego there. Um, I think it's just like people always talk about being coachable, but like, are you a good coach? You know, like I think about it a lot more now that I coach my children's sports teams. But like, you got to put people in a position to win. And so, I don't know, sometimes people just suck, but other times, like for myself, I have a hard time getting my process out of my head and onto paper for someone else to duplicate. My wife, she could probably duplicate her whole life, and like automate it. And like for me, that gives me a headache just thinking about it. But she doesn't. She does it pretty efficiently and effectively. So I think that she has like a healthy ego. I wouldn't say she's like high in the ego or low on the ego. You got to have some ego. Lack of ego is like detrimental to yourself. But I think that she's more willing to I think that it comes down to being able to sit down and look at the minute details without getting lost in the sauce.
True, and actually doing the work, like and
Yeah.
holding yourself accountable for it. I think there's some very simple actions that people can do every day. One of mine, and I think this is something you might have even referenced or similar in your book. But personally, when I really took my own responsibility and told myself one thing I can control every day is my attitude and my effort, regardless of anything outside my realm of control or what I have. Like I can do that. So like no matter what, if I show up in a bad mood or don't give it my all, that's on nobody but myself, right? And that can always be changed. And if even if you are having a bad day or in a bad mood, like there's something for everybody that's going to change that and put it. Might be a conversation with the right person, might be the right song, might be a laugh and some comedy, whatever it is for you. Take a break, have a little fun, relax for a minute, jam out, watch a video, whatever it is that just gets you like back. And then you're like, oh shit, things aren't that bad, right? And dive back into your day. Like sometimes, and that goes back to another thing you talk about that I think people overlook, and that's checking in with themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. My dad always calls it clearing his thoughts, right? Like almost like a cue. Like I visualize like just this like mental cue of things. I'm like, all right, like dismiss all, right? Well, you can't do that. So just checking in and being like, all right, cool. Like this is where I'm at. This is like, I don't know. Do I feel good about this? Do I feel bad about this? Am I giving my best effort? Am I trying to make sense of why I'm not giving my best effort if I'm not? Um, Trying to like think of solutions to perceived problems. Sometimes a feeling, in my opinion, is not always reality, right? Like you could feel something, but it doesn't make the reality actually reflect that. And so, like, hold myself accountable and be like, all right, I feel this way, but is this actually what's going on around me, or is there something distorting my like view of it? You know?
Yep.
And if I'm feeling it and my reality is reflecting it, I'm like, yeah, like, all right, there's a problem. I need to fix this. But if I'm feeling it, but like I have 7 kids, so say like I feel like I'm like overwhelmed by the kids, but then like every time the kids are gone, I'm not working. Well, then maybe it's not the kids, maybe something else is overwhelming me, you know?
Yep. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. Um, so as I mentioned, and just in case anybody's watching on Facebook or on the live stream or here on the YouTube, Eddie, yeah, if you have that link for those certifications for anybody watching, send it over to me and I'll put it right in the description. Or anybody watching on the Facebook Live can just comment, link or certification, and I'll get that over to you. And again, I had mentioned reading this just recently, so just to kind of plug Eddie's book here, Memoirs of a 30-Year-Old F-Up. And what he really goes over is 30 different lessons that kind of he had learned or was taught, and how they apply to his life. And the last one that really stuck with me, or the last one I want to bring up right now, I can't say the last one that stuck with me, but the second one, I believe it was in there, and we talked about this. I love the one about question everything. That's kind of in my nature too. I've never necessarily been like a step in line, follow suit type of guy. I've always asked questions or maybe stepped outside that line, good, bad, or indifferent. That's just part of my personality, and I've come to embrace it. And I think it served me well. Some people thinks it serves them well just staying in line and following tune and doing what they're told. And I guess in certain applications, there's some truth to that, but I don't think as an overarching, general principle, that's really a smart way of going through life personally, especially the way that things are portrayed or presented and positioned to people to really deceive. Ultimately, it's not serving you well in my estimation. So is there anything you want to talk about or add on to that? But that just really got me thinking a little when I was reading that.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently they don't teach us in school anymore, but it's just critical thinking. I
They
think you
don't
and I
teach it.
said that,
I
right?
don't know if they ever taught it in school.
It's just critical thinking. And so you can blindly accept information as truth, or you can drill down and like figure out what the actual truth is. And maybe the
Right.
truth is what you first heard, but like you don't know unless you do the work.
You're right.
And like
You're right.
that knows this is about conspiracy theory. People are always like, what, cite your sources, or like ask for your sources. And like people are like so hesitant, reluctant to give them. But it's not, I think, because of the lack of feeling confidence in them as much as like, man, like, it's time and effort I put into like obtaining and acquiring this information, that like I don't even feel, it feels disrespectful to even like share it with you, to yourself,
Mhm.
because you've gotta have that. There's I think it's Supreme Court or federal judge back in the day, Judge Powers, I think his name was. And he said, if you don't know your rights and you don't fight for your rights, that you don't deserve your rights. Right? And so when you think about that, this isn't a talk about rights or any of that stuff, but like the whole like question everything, like you've really got to do the research to know like what is what and why and how you navigate that. Because if you don't, and you just take things at face value, then you're just gonna live your life being somebody else's puppet.
For real. No, well said. Well said. Last question I wanted to ask you one more before I open up to Mike or JP here on the Zoom and see if they have any questions or anything to add. Something I like to ask everybody before I end the call, and I haven't done this consistently, but I'm going to try to keep doing this going forward when I have guests on, is I know a majority of people and people in this group that I talk to are still somewhere between 1, 2, 3, 4K a month, and really trying to, make a full-time income or a living. So I like to ask people, as a general rule, we all know everybody's situation, offers, all that's going to be different. But as a general rule, as an entrepreneur trying to make a healthy living, if you're making a grand or two a month and you want to double or triple that, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give somebody?
You gotta work the system. You gotta follow up until they tell you to leave them alone, or they give you their 16 digits. You need to forget about collecting 10 digits at the bar or the club or the gym,
Mhm.
and just focus on the 16 digits. And you need to spend as much time as you possibly can doing sales, at least like 2 hours a day. You have to. Like, you cannot make sales if you're not making offers, if you're not having conversations. There's some people that I will follow up with, like I'll send them like 10 or 15 text messages after a sales call, and they won't respond once until that one time that they do.
Yep.
And they always say thank you. And even if they're not interested, they're never rude. I've never had one person be like, quit fucking texting me. It's always just like, yeah, we're not interested at this time. It's like, oh, thanks. I hate to bother you, you know? But like 10 plus times, like contacting people and then them finally making a 3, 5, 6K investment, just because like you followed up. People are busy. I have 6, 7 kids, you
Yep.
know, married and coach, and I got probably hella unanswered text messages, like a lot. So like I'm not always trying to talk to a salesperson or someone trying to sell me something. But if I am interested, I am interested, you know.
Yep. No, that's a great one. The sale is in the follow-up. I must preach that weekly at minimum between running sales teams and sales training. And like, I don't know how many times I repeat that. So true. And actually Mike on this call works for one of the sales teams that I help oversee and manage. I'm sure he knows this already because Mike's great with follow-up, but I'm sure he could attest to that as well as has probably heard me say it numerous times. Mike, are you able to unmute? Anything to add or any questions about the conversation or just any takeaways? Or maybe he's just listening in the background. I'll give him a minute.
You see this big storm in his background.
That's JP. Oh, no, that was Mike. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mike. I thought that was JP that
yeah.
put that. I read it
Can
wrong.
No, it's me.
Okay. No worries. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
listening.
it's already cutting out, Ray.
Gotcha. No
I'm gonna leave it.
worries. My bad. I read it wrong. And then JP put in the chat, hey, gents, great call. Enjoying the conversation immensely. Immensely great space for real shit. Excellent. Thank you, JP. Anything you want to add or any questions, JP? I'm not sure if you're able to speak. I read that wrong. I thought it was you that typed that in.
No, just a great conversation, and thank you, as always, for holding this space open. Very important conversation. Really enjoying it, by the way. I don't have any questions or comments, just thanks again for holding the space. And this is my first time actually hearing the speaker. So thank you again for having him as a special featured guest. Thanks.
Oh, awesome. You must usually hop on the ones where I just run them and do my training, which is the every other week ones, but great. Awesome. Hey, Eddie, I kind of chuckled there. One thing you said in your last answer, and I want to kind of reiterate this is like the advice he would give. And you are the one that held me accountable and made me start to really realize this and ask myself this at the end of the day. But not only that, this was something I implemented down onto my clients and into my coaching. But I'd be like, hey, Eddie, when I was like first starting off and you were my coach, I didn't make any sales today. How many offers did you make? I was like, oh shit, I didn't make any. Well, how'd you expect to make a fucking sale? Right. And I was like, damn it. Right. So like I had to start, like I wouldn't go say I didn't make any sales today if I didn't go out there and do some marketing and make some offers. Right. And then once I started doing that, all of a sudden, wow, I was making sales because I was actually talking to people and putting out offers. So the one thing I always say to somebody, if for anybody that might be watching and hasn't heard my take on like what you need right now early on in your business to, let's just say you're trying to make your first 5K months consistently or right around that point, you're at 1, 2, 3K. There's 2 things you need in your business early on, and only 2. You need marketing, you need people to be talking to, whether that's Facebook, email, I don't care how, just conversations and people to be talking to or doing outreach, and you need sales. So all those other things come in after as fancy bells and whistles and byproducts, and they add value, right? The landing pages, the websites, yada, yada, yada. Sure, there's a place for those. Early on, nobody really cares about that. If you can solve a problem, have a conversation, close the deal, collect payment, and deliver a result, that's what you need to do. So don't focus on that other stuff until you need it, right? You don't need any of that stuff to start.
I stole that from my high school football coach.
Did you?
Yeah, because like we'd be in our defensive, and he was also one of the marketing teachers. But on defense, we'd have our defensive meetings on Saturdays after the game. He would we would go over the things, and in our meetings, like number 1, if you hold the other team to 0 points, they can't win the game.
That's
Number
true.
2, if you prevent them from getting first downs or as many first downs as you can, they can't advance the ball. Number 3, if you win the turnover battle, then you give the offense more opportunities to be on the field and their offense less opportunities. And number 4, if you do all the other things and you score a defensive touchdown, you win the game without the offense.
Lofty goal, but it's doable.
Yeah, but it's just about, winning at all 4 phases. And so if you like do those things in any activity in life, so to speak, then your result should be positive, no matter what the other person does.
Awesome. Cool. And Eddie, so yeah, send me over that link in our SMS thread or in our messenger thread or whatever, so I can post it in the descriptions. And if you have anything you want me to put out there for how people can maybe get a hold of you or get your book or anything like that, just let me know and I'll throw it in there as well. I got to run off to another call, but thank you for coming on, dude. This was a blast. I had a blast catching up, just jamming with you the last 45 minutes. And thank you for your insight and what you've shared here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Totally, man. We'll be in touch soon.
All right, have a good day.
See you, buddy.